Welcome to the Conjugate Nation podcast.
Hello, everybody. We are back. We've got a guest for episode 9. Big Jesse Ward is joining us, and I'm going to actually hand the intro for this one off to Chris today.
Jesse, so a pleasure having you on, man. This is kind of full circle for me as you're the one that introduced me to the Conjugate system and Westside Barbell, and worked with you a long time. So I'll embarrass you as much as I can here with the intro. And so we actually went to rival colleges. He went to Willamette University, which is a prestigious academic school. I went to Linfield, which was a rival. Studied exercise science, was doing the powerlifting thing, played football, graduated from Willamette with the exercise science degree, and then did the Globo gym thing for a few years, which is exactly what I did as well. And then you opened up your locals gym in 2007, right? In Linwood, Washington, and that was a strength and conditioning facility. I know at some point, which we'll get into it, you found Westside Barbell and found Conjugate. Found CrossFit, and now it's Linwood CrossFit as well. You also own Edmonds CrossFit, so you're running 2 gyms at this point. Been on staff, so we've worked together on CrossFit headquarters staff for a long time, for almost 15 years. So you found CrossFit in 2008, 2007? So yeah, I got on in 2009, 2008. So yeah, you've been working level 1s, level 2s a long time. Generally revered on staff as one of the brighter minds, and it's earned you the nickname the Wizard, and not just for that beard, but because of your general knowledge for all things exercise and more. So excited for this conversation and to keep the listeners to hear your story. So I guess we'll just kick it off and just talk about how you found Westside Barbell and CrossFit in your gym and what that's kind of meant for your facility.
Thanks, Chris. First of all, I'm flattered, buddy. But no stolen valor. I was a place kicker, so I didn't actually play football.
I tried to save you, man. I was going to leave that little detail out. You had to be the biggest kicker that was in the conference. What were you? How tall and how much did you weigh when you were kicking?
My high school coach hated me. I was 240 pounds as a junior. When I came into the weight training room, I'm like, "Hey, I want to be the place kicker," and he was like, "You mean tackle?" And I was like, "Nah, you'd be really good at kicking. I mean, I can really do that job good, coach." And he was like, "No, but you don't get it, kid. You're 6 feet tall and 250 pounds or whatever. Like, you got to get your ass in the line." I was not up for that. Pretty funny. But how I came across Westside, it was kind of a couple of things. When I was at Willamette, I was lucky enough to attend a Jimmy Radcliffe lecture on the scientific foundations of power, and it was mass cool. The guy was an electrifying speaker. And super dynamic guy. I mean, he just did plyos on stage and dress shoes. And it was like, yo, this guy is mad explosive. Like, okay, he knows a thing or two about a thing or two. And so those notes kind of became formative to my understanding outside of the exercise science stuff on, just on the physics, I guess, of power output. And then, met a guy named Joel Jameson who ran End Zone Athletics back in the day. I've fallen out of touch with Joel. He's a good dude though. But he was training Westside stuff, and he was at the Globo gym I was at before he opened his own gym for 2 or 3 months before he left. And so we took a USAW course together because he just wanted to get the cert thing, and I was happy to do it. It was a few $100, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll go ahead and learn how to snatch or whatever, which they didn't teach us. It's hilarious. And this is 2003, right? So you kind of, so then kind of through Joel, I learned the name of Westside, but there wasn't, in 2003, there wasn't the internet. I mean, there was, but it's not like you could find videos, right? So I ordered a bunch of DVDs and a 4 VHS tape set, and all the little manuals I could find and everything. And my wife, my girlfriend at the time, Carrie, we probably spent a few hundred hours watching these fucking DVDs on repeat. She probably knows more about Mike Ruggiero's butt than she knows about mine at this point. It's unbelievable, And Chris Smith and these old Westside guys are just these grinders on these reps, And so, yeah, we sit there and just watch that stuff endlessly until we figured it all out. And that's pretty much when I started training that system was about 2003, end of 2003 until.
So were you that before CrossFit?
Yeah. CrossFit, we opened the gym and then about a year later stumbled across CrossFit. We incorporated Locals Gym in 2006. And
Crazy.
we had the main rack, the reverse hyper, the bench rack, an ab machine, and a few other things in a buddy's garage, and we go there and kick ass with the other 3 gym memberships that I had, because we couldn't figure out a place to train that worked for everything. So yeah, I mean, we're all over the place. I mean, fuck, I worked at a gym. I went and trained with Bull Stewart down at Columbia City Fitness Center. I went and trained with Todd Christensen at Seattle Strength and Power. I mean, these are, this is a real drive away from me, because Todd had all the stones and stuff, and Bull just had he had the thing was working. He had the team, he had the crew, the extra grip, and the equipment was there. But the squatting with the bands and chains and stuff like that, we had to do it in our own garage, because nobody had that stuff. That was, ultimately new at that point in time. Bull and Todd weren't into that. You certainly couldn't do it at the Miekos Fitness, because that's just not that's not happening, right? So so you got 4 places to go work out at, because it's what it takes, I guess. So it was kind of the reason to open our own gym. Was like, dude, can we just do this shit in one place? Because there's got to be other guys like me who are trying to do it. And so that's, like I said, we incorporated 2006, finally opened the doors in 2007. Took a long time to get the lease and stuff, and then
and that's in the space you're in right now still, right?
Same.
Yeah. And what do you open with for square footage? 4,300.
Same right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Straight to it.
Yeah. Shit, man, we probably went through 6 different spots.
Yeah.
And back then, it sounds, I feel like a dinosaur, but it's like like you'd call a place, and be like, hi, we want to lease your building. And they'd be like, what do you want to put in it? And we'd be like, a gym. And they'd be like, no. And we're like, bro, I'll pay you the money. Like, let me into your building. Like, no, gyms go out of business a lot, and we don't want to have a gym, and it's a conditional use, and so whatever. And now it's like everybody has a gym anywhere. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
So I feel like a pioneer for you can use a lot of industrial space to create a gym, and it'll totally work and whatever. Yeah, I feel like it's super irritating, because literally a competitor opened up in the original spot we were looking at, just 12 years down the road. And it was like, you bastards told me no when I was 25. I hate you. If I wanted to bomb the bourgeoisie more, it was that was the moment, It was, I was seriously upset for probably 8 months. It's terrible. It's a cool spot. It's just not the primo spot.
And then, so you opened, and that was what was your primary then? Were you personal training? You went into classes right away? So if it was pre-CrossFit and just at the edge of you starting Westside stuff, what were you getting up to?
It was mostly strength and conditioning. The whole gym was turf. There wasn't any black matting anywhere really. I should say the back had black matting for deads and all that kind of jazz. We had platforms. We had a big wall kind of demising the space in the front and back halves. The front half was more your speed, agility, quickness, that kind of stuff, and the back was just proper, as far as I can see, 24, 25 years old, powerlifting stuff. Had the right rack, and it had the hypers and the benches and the dumbbells and all this stuff. And then, it was mostly personal training. We didn't do any classes. It was a basic membership gym. You paid, your $40 a month, come in and train. And plus private training. Yeah.
And then you started implementing the Westside stuff with private training. Yeah. And were you posting stuff for people to do? So if you were if you were coming into the gym for the day on a $40 membership, just do whatever you want.
No, it's just very much the other thing we did, to make money was rented space to trainers. It made sense to me that if I could, at the Globo gym, sell $7,000 a month in training and only get paid $3,500 for it, I was like, well, I'll just do my own thing and make all that money, thanks, and then have to pay for it. So I figured there was probably a handful of other coaches, maybe 4 or 5 in the area, who were good. There's a 24, there's in LA, there's a Bally's that was on Scarborough Lake at the time. There's probably one mayor at each gym who's doing pretty good. I figured, hey, you pay me $500-600 a month and train here and take all the money you want out of that. It seemed like a no-brainer. Nobody would bite. We didn't get anybody to sign up. Not one coach was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Like, whatever. But so that kind of didn't work at all.
Sorry,
what's
2003. That? I'm just thinking there's no road back then. Thinking, where in the heck do you order? Did you go to original jump stretch? And you bought bands from the The original people, that's
from
awesome.
Dick himself. Yeah.
Were you did you get your bar? Do you get stuff from Iron Mine then too? Like, was it like?
No, I mean, I knew about Iron Mind and I dug it because I was doing handling games at the same time. But their stuff was like more expensive. We got our safety bar from remember Krapinsek Strength Systems.
Yep.
Yeah,
they just went out of business right after COVID.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, unfortunately,
I bought the safety bar from them,
which they make the best safety squat bar. Like, I love Rogue stuff.
sick.
Rogues is nice now. They didn't have the
Yeah.
angle for a while. Theirs is nice now, but Krapinsek, like, I have 8 of those at my gym, and they're awesome. They take abuse.
Elite FTS is where we got the rack and the hyper stuff from at the time.
yeah, because your mono's elite too, right?
Yeah, we sold that beast.
Yeah,
Yes.
Bad. Yeah,
You have a nice setup at your gym. A lot of good variation equipment.
thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of COVID kind of took a lot of that stuff out. We really don't have anybody who's training proper powerlifting anymore, really. So yeah, the mono's gone. We sold the calibrated set, and we fused the belt squat with the rack. So like the floor of the rack is the belt squat. It's pretty cool. It's a space saver for sure, and it kind of kills the rack a little bit. There's no super wide squatting in it because it's not on the floor, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, the guys don't have to use it. It's fun. We've got another proper rack now with the monolith attachments in it from Rogue, which work great. Those things are sick. Yeah, we've
sold the comp plates.
I know. What?
That was my first powerlifting meet ever.
Yeah.
Was at your gym. That was the first time any of our athletes ever went anywhere and participated in powerlifting at all. Was we would drive down to Linwood. It was the only place we competed. Like, we didn't want to do it in Canada. We didn't like the federations, the rules, and so we went down to Linwood like for years. We came down.
That makes you super proud, dude. Thanks.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was great. It was always a good meet.
Well, the thing that got weird about it is the more popular federations down here won't let you use the mono.
Same as Canada.
And it's like, I don't know, you guys have seen Ray Williams do his squats, right?
Oh man.
You know, so he like literally walks out of the rack with 1,100 pounds in the dude's back. It's 1,008 or whatever it is, right? 1,050. And he's got like 5 little nerds around him.
All willing to die.
They're like this. They're like, I'm going to help you, Ray. And Ray's just like ultimate male status and just squats, right? And it's like, if anything bad happens, like God forbid, I mean, the guy's a tank and nothing should happen, but holy cow, like those guys are doing nothing.
Totally. Well, and those racks those multi-racks are rarely, if ever, even bolted down.
Yeah, it's rickety as hell.
Yeah. So even if it hits the rack, you see the video of the racks flipping over and the guys trying to jump over the bar, save themselves.
Dude, I mean,
Crazy.
it's one of those things where, I mean, we had a guy, you might even have been there, dude, when the
I was.
It was the first flight of the heavyweights, the first flight of the proper, like, I'm here to lift weights. And the guys, did a 532 opener on the squat, which I know it's not, it's not so heavy, but it's fucking heavy. It's 500 pounds. And the dude blew both his quad tendons right on the way down.
Yeah.
Like, not even the way up. The safety strap, as far as I'm concerned, saved his life.
So fast. Yeah. It was one of those that would happen so fast. There was no chance for anyone to do anything about it.
No, nothing. Yeah. All it would have done is hit the spotters on the way down, too.
100%. There were just more people who got injured if it wasn't for the monolift and the straps. Yeah.
That's the thing.
Thinking about it,
The monoliths are just much safer because you can have the straps. You don't have someone walking, which is safer for the athlete, easier for people to spot. But I've seen spotters lose their fingers. I saw a guy, hands were underneath. Everybody jumped out of the way. One guy did his job. Weight hit his hands, 1,100 pounds, took him straight to the ground, popped 3 fingers right off. And, it's like, I know people are like, oh, it's not, some people are like, it's not squatting if you don't have a rack. It's all squatting. We can all take appreciation for when things are done at different time eras, right?
Totally.
So like, I look and I don't go, oh, dude, Jesse Owens, like, there are women who can run faster times now. Like, no. Everybody, male, female, it doesn't matter what time. I look at the time era and what something was done. And I consider you, like, if you're among the top 1% in the world or you're a world champion, like, they're all pretty much equal to me because it just depends on the time era, what your competition was, what the rules were, what the products were being used. So it doesn't really matter, but and it's okay if some people want to walk out. I just understand for people like you guys, and for us, we prefer not to do that. I have athletes who can do it. I have athletes who hit big numbers doing it. but you last longer. And if you love the sport, you want to stay in it as long as possible. And you want your spotters walking around, going home safe, and you want your athletes going home, safe. So
yeah, squats credited from the start of the lift through the bottom position back to the top. No one cares or should care what you do before and after that.
Yeah, I mean, walking out's fine. I think that's pretty cool. But and they should still, if they want to have people walk out, then they should make some kind of a gear apparatus cage where they can actually have safety equipment, because it's one of those things that all it's going to take is for somebody who's popular and a high number guy to get properly crushed.
Yeah,
and then they're going to have to be like, oh, we got to rethink our sport, and you're like, that is ridiculous to have to use a tragedy to create motivation for that. I mean, it's silly. It's absolutely.
I think it leans on the fact that people don't want to, like, when you're traveling and setting a meetup somewhere. I mean, you throw a couple of those like ER racks, there's multi racks in. It's easy to shove a bunch of those in a trailer. Monolift is a different machine to move around, and then if you have a mono, you also need a comp bench setup. And I think that's more of it. And on mono is between your mono and a comp bench, you're out a lot more money. You're like, but that should not be the leading. That's unreasonable. Like that's not. You solve the problem.
That's right. Yeah. And you'll sell better. You can charge more money, you sell more spots. People will dig it. The whole thing will grow. It'll be good.
Yeah.
I got a fun fact for you. Stan Efferding?
Yeah.
He single-handedly loaded his own mono in his own truck. Like a fucking man.
Just lift it? Just grab the 4x4s? Just straight lift?
But it was like, he was the only guy there. And then we came back and that shit was in his truck. And we were like, dude, and he was like, well, I picked it up, put it in there, and we're like, my guy, like, what? It was nuts. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, because you like, well, I remember, what did he do? He did, because I met him at one of your meets.
Yeah.
And he did what did he do? Nine reps incline DB bench with 2 10s?
Something like that. Yeah, they were legitimately very large dumbbells.
Yeah, just like more than 24 inches high when they're standing on their on end.
Yeah, it's silly.
Yeah, that's man, good times.
Super.
How did CrossFit settle into that then? So you started and you were open for several years before.
No, we didn't open the doors until like August 07.
Right. Okay.
So it was like December 07. We stumbled across the website. I think some dude I met years ago like had planted the seed. He was like we met somewhere like at a house party or something. And the guy was like, "Oh, you work out a lot? You do CrossFit?" And I was like, "No, I'm like 280 pounds, right?" I'm like, "Abel, I don't know what it is." I was like, "No, dude, what is it?" And he's like, "Because I'm, I feel like I'm the coolest guy I know, right? You know how that is." and he's like, "Oh, it's like you do 21 thrusters and 21 pull-ups, and you do like 15 of those, and you do like 9 of them, and you go as fast as you can." And I was like, "Circuits sounds tough." Here's boss, like whatever, I bench for 100, like get out of my face, nerd. And so that was probably like 05 maybe. And then I think I just stumbled across it. I remembered it and wanted to Google it or something. And so I just was hanging out, because the gym's pretty empty for long periods of time at that time, middle of the day,
Yeah.
And I was like, this might actually be really useful for the people that I train. Like they're not, they don't want to be powerlifters, but they should run. And the pull-up is pretty cool, and they should probably do things in combination that make them tired. And I was like, shit, so we started doing some of it, and it was obviously very effective, and kind of off we went. Changed the whole thing. I mean, saved the gym ultimately.
Probably searched it on AOL, not Google back then.
Like, we don't remember this AOL addresses still. I love it.
Can they get email there? Like, does it still exist, or is it, like... They just haven't checked it in the last 10 years.
Like we bought the legacy addresses for like the advertising. I don't know what the deal is. It's whack.
And then you switched, and then heavy duty, because then the powerlifting was in the back, right? Like you had the powerlifting area, and then the rest of the gym was all CrossFit.
Yep. And then I think we took the wall down in like 2016.
Yeah.
And we doubled our size in 2010. Which it seemed like the right thing to do at the time, but was ultimately a mistake. And then in 2016, we walled it back up and then took out the back room wall. So that opened the gym up to one main floor of 4,300. So a lot of layout changes, rebuilt a mezzanine, all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Powerlifting and CrossFit's a good fit though, especially since you're doing Conjugate and you're varying everything anyway. So it's kind of nice. It's a lot of people, talk to you like, you get into powerlifting and like, well, how do you do CrossFit then? Like, it's this like complete opposite thing. It's like constantly varied, high intensity. I don't know. Kind of sounds similar,
Yeah. I mean, ultimately it's conjugate training for powerlifting is the same thing as CrossFit for fitness. Like it's conjugated training for fitness as opposed to in the same way that you could conjugate training for the swimmer or a thrower or a whatever, right? A gymnast, I suppose, would be different. They got to practice so much stuff, but but if your activity is horsepower driven, then you're gonna want to vary that shit so it works better.
How did CrossFit find you?
Well,
and recruit you?
Well, I mean, it was pretty weird because we Charles and I, you met Charles maybe, Jess. Nice, good dude. He's like 75 now, but he was like 60 at the time.
I don't know if I had
six pack, and you could do pull-ups at 60, and you were like, this guy's a savage, and he was really cool, dude. So been to Nam, he was a lifetime carpenter, and just had all these stories. And every time you hang with Charles, you get a new story, and you're like, dude, I thought the last one was a doozy. I mean, it's epic, right? So we go on Valentine's Day weekend in 2008. Like my kids are just about to get born. Like the next week they were born, but it was like, here's the seminar. We got to go, right? And so Charles and I go, and it's the last gig. We didn't know at the time, right? But it was the last gig at the original CrossFit gym, the original, Glassman's gym.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, so we did that for the 2 days. Got smoked, right? Got absolutely just, torn alive. Tosh was there teaching people stuff, Nicole, and everybody we got cooked, right? And I was super bummed because I was supposed to be the big guy, but then Wellborn was there too at the same time. Totally stole my thunder. I was like, oh, I'm so skinny, shit. And so that's in February. And then, so the gym had already affiliated by that point because you didn't even have to have a level 1 to affiliate at that time. It was just like, we think you're awesome. We want to do it too. And they were like, you're in, nice essay. And I was like, thanks. So we did that. And then the games was in July that year. It was like early in July, and it was $100. So I just registered, and there was probably, I think it was just me. Carrie and I went, on a shoestring, right? Because the boys were like 4 months old. So we like left them with their family for like the week, and she was like, totally sick. And, it was like, but he had to get you got to get a break somehow, some way. So this is the way we do it. So we road trip down in the fucking Focus, staying in I was training a lady who worked for Hilton at the time. So we're spending like $30 a night for a hotel on the different places we stopped at. It was such a ridiculous trip. And, and competed at the games that year and got like, terrible. I think I beat like 20 guys.
And still CrossFit Games athlete.
Yeah.
Technically. I missed that on the credentials, Chris.
When you can register for $100, Anyway, so went and did that. But then that was the Saturday, Sunday. And there was a level 2 course the Thursday, Friday following. So, we bombed down, tore my hands apart, left my ego in the dust, and then went and did a total at Camp Pendleton, like on the Tuesday after the games. And then, which is actually really cool that they just let me on base, just like a random, like, hi, I heard the gym's equipment is here from the CrossFit place. And the guy was like, yeah. And I was like, can I go work out on it? And he was like, I mean, sure, dude. And they threw me a little, like, on the base I went, and I had bungled around for about an hour to find the joint, and then jacked up 1,000-pound total and left. It was really weird. But and then the level 2, like I said, the level 2 course happened, and there was Todd was there taking his level 2, Chris, at the time.
Dang.
And like everybody failed. There were like 21 of us, and only 3 of us passed.
Yeah, because it's the old school level 2, which is like the 4 now, right?
Yeah, it's just you show up, and you lead some groups, teach some stuff, and they just evaluate you, pass, fail. And and luckily enough, I'd already been coaching, professionally since I was like 17, 18. I was coaching kicking camps when I was young, doing video analysis and biomechanics on these kids, and did rope programs for my friends in college, all throughout college, and all that shit. And then, the 10,000 sessions I had in the 4 years at Miyako's, and then, for the prior 6 months, I was just doing stick drills in the gym every day. It was like I knew I wasn't good at teaching this stuff. I didn't know the movements that well. So I just was like, I got an idea. There's these 9 moves they taught us at the level 1. I'm just going to run them every class forever. And I taught all the classes except for like 1, or whatever. So I just got, gang of reps at this stuff. And lo and behold, it showed up and it worked to barely pass the level 2. And it was like maybe a month after that Dave Castro emailed me, was like, hey, we got a gig in Redmond. You want to come, come help out? And I went and Lisa Ray saved my butt in the squats group because I did poorly at that, and then salvaged it from the presses on and didn't get like fired or whatever, and got asked back for another one and another one, another one. Eventually started sending me paychecks. I was like, no, I don't need that. These are really quite fun. And they were like, no, like it's work. You have a 1099. Here's your $500. And I was like, sick, thanks. You know,
just to clarify,
it was awesome. At the time we were so broke, dude. Yeah, like that year there were 2 gigs in December I got back to back, and it was like, oh, we get to have Christmas. Awesome. This is dope. I mean, it really was like a lifesaver. We were renting a place. There was like 8 of us living there. I mean, it was tight. It was crazy.
Man, things are so different now from how they were,
Dude.
Even like 15 years ago.
Yeah, those level 2s were brutal because those are actually.
How many L1, L2s you've done now?
What's that, Chris?
So go ahead, Chris.
Just so people know, like to clarify, like that level 2, that's actually the level 4. So Jesse is a level 4 certified trainer, and what it used to be is you would show up and you teach 3 different movements: the deadlift, a press, and a squat. And then I don't know exactly who did yours. Mine was Boz, Nicole, and Todd. And then you had the whole group of people at the end of the seminar, and then you walked into this room and they're sitting at a table, and basically like each one would give you your grade and you'd have your total. And it was similar for mine. Mine was 4 out of the 21 or 22 passed, and it was like Matt Chan and Jen Hunter Marshall and Dennis Marshall, you know, like just total studs, but all of them have been trainers, you know, in the past leading up to that. A brutal test for sure.
Yeah. I think I must have been
you passed it too, right?
Maybe iteration of that. Cause I did it as well. But I did mine down at Freddie's gym in San Fran.
Same.
And it was Andy Stumpf, Nicole, Boz, and can't remember who else was there. But we did it. We had a day where you had a chance. So you kind of ran through it. They evaluated you and gave you a bunch of feedback. And I went down there 6 months into coaching CrossFit when I was still like up in Whistler with Jordan. And I was like, yeah, level 2 sounds great. Love to learn more, etc. Got through my first day. Got back to the hotel. I flew down there by myself. I was like, you got a couple choices to make here. Like you can go to bed right now and get a good night's sleep and roll dice down the table tomorrow. But there's a real good chance you know where they land. Or you could stay up all night and just air coach everything in your hotel room by yourself. And just hammer caffeine and give it your best shot. And that I chose the latter and it worked out, but fucking barely. Like I was one of like 4 guys that passed. And actually, funny enough, it was John Wellborn, Kalipa, and Carl Paoli were the other guys who passed at that seminar. Yeah, I always look at my level 2 class photo and I'm like, oh, like everyone here is famously popular except that one fucking guy in the middle. Who the fuck's he?
I love your self-talk, Jesse. Whenever you get like on that roll, that shit makes me happy, bro. I miss it.
Oh man. Some fucking guy.
It's awesome.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. Do you know how many level 1s and 2s you've been at now?
I think if it's not 300-ish, it's really high 2s. I don't keep track of it clearly, but I remember last time they did it years ago, it was, really high 2s. So it was like, okay, gotta be 300 something now.
Man, that's crazy. What do you do now? Like, how many are you doing a month? Like, are you still cranking?
I mean, I put in for every weekend and I get infrequently.
Yeah.
So I do. April, I got 3, which is whack. But I think I've only had 3 this year so far. So it's kind of like, okay,
right.
whatever. Yeah.
Huh. Crazy. And then years of CrossFit Games judge.
Yeah, I think 11 years of that.
Easily identifiable anywhere on the field.
As long as you know to look in the background.
Among men.
Yeah. Keep doing your reps, buddy.
So the cool thing was, Jesse, so there was and Shane, you were around a little bit during this time. There was a point where Greg and Louie got linked up, and we got to meet Louie down in San Diego for that 2010 summit. I think I just saw a picture of that at HQ, which is awesome. I need to send it to you, Jesse. It's great.
Yeah, that was cool.
Huh.
So we got to meet Louie there, and then you were actually involved when Dave and the whole team went out to Westside or Columbus. And Shane, I think you might have been there as well. There's still videos you can watch. Tony Budding's on it. So you must have just felt like in your prime, you knew this stuff you'd already been around this stuff, and here's all these, the Matt Chance and all the CrossFitters just learning this for the first time. Take us through that experience.
Oh, for Jesse or me?
Yeah, I think maybe both of you. So, Jesse, was that the same year, 2010? Yeah, I'd love to hear both of your guys' experience with that, because that was the kind of CrossFit's introduction into Westside.
I was there for that summit, and I was also I went to Westside too. I think that same year.
We went.
Right.
We went after that, right?
So
yeah,
you
and I
second
went
one.
Once Abby was there, yeah.
Yeah, Jesse, were you at is that the second one we did at Westside? It was one of the.
I think Big Jesse was at the very first one at Westside, and then I think I was at the second one at Westside, because that's where I met you, Shane.
Right. Okay.
But Big Jesse went with the original one that was that's where they had like what's his name?
Curtis was there, Matt Jam was there.
Yeah, that's the one they videoed for the CrossFit Journal, because that was the first I ever saw of anything was Dave Castro pulling the sled out in the yard like duck walk style. And I watched all those videos, and that was the first bit that I'd really seen of any of that sort of stuff was the seminar you're at, because I remember you had an orange hoodie on, I think.
Yeah, so I did help I was there for both of them, but it's funny because at the time I didn't know what CrossFit was or CrossFitters, and Louis talking to me about this, like, hey, you think we should have these people out? And I'm like, hey, look, most, not knocking powerlifters, but most powerlifters already think they know what they're doing at some point if they hit an elite total or halfway decent total in the gym. And so a lot of times they come out, halfway listen, maybe listen a little bit. You give them stuff to read. They don't read it half the time. Some people do, but most don't. And so what was cool to me is we were sitting there, and once we got into with the lecture part of it, Louis bringing up different points, and man, so many people were firing questions from books that we recommended to read. And it was just one of those things where I'm like, man, a lot of these people read multiple books we suggested before they even got here. These are not easy books to read. This is not, to me, I'm like, whoa, like we usually have to tell if we do a group with powerlifters, tell them books to read afterwards. But to have people being proactive and reading the books on our list beforehand is actually awesome. And it was the only group that ever happened with. So, I just remember afterwards, Louis was like, so what do you think? Like, you think we should keep doing this for these guys or no? Or I'm like, oh yeah. And he's like, well, so why do you think that? I'm like, well, they already do the conjugate system. I mean, that's CrossFit is conjugate system, but it's for the generalists. I'm like, we're conjugate for the specialist. But I was like, for one simple thing, I was like, you want to get the conjugate system out to the masses and into bigger groups of people and have it change strength and conditioning. I was like, you have to go with these people. Like, everybody here has very well read. They're thirsty for knowledge. They're asking what books to read. They're asking great questions. I'm like, this is the group who will be able to deliver your information in the best manner possible and hit the biggest groups of people. And they care. I don't know. I was like, I don't know how CrossFit did it, but they figured out how to get people who have a thirst for knowledge and to evolve. And they got the same groups of people and put them in the same room together and figured out how to get groups like that together. I'm like, so of course, yeah, we had a great time because it's like, you got a bunch of people who are in shape, but yet they're experiencing stuff that's like, whoa, like, I can't believe how hard this is. And the first thing you're going to do is they're going to want to get good at it when they go home and try to figure out how to get good at those things. So, it was an awesome experience, actually. We had a really good time with it. And part of what made me want to start doing seminars for CrossFit athletes.
I think one of the single best things about CrossFitters is like it is hard to find another group who's that motivated to learn, improve, thirst for knowledge is awesome, which has always made it so rad, like getting a chance to work with those kind of athletes at all.
It's like, Lou used to say, become a student in your sport. That doesn't mean like, you go pick up a heavy weight and then pretend you do, Westside system your whole, and you know everything about it. It means you truly try to learn every aspect of whatever you're doing in training. And then once you have a high level elite grasp on it, you spend the rest of your life trying to disprove it and looking at what everybody else is doing and trying to evolve it, trying to disprove it. It's this constant, fight and evolution. And that's the one thing that was great about a lot of the CrossFit athletes game. A lot of them would come there with a good knowledge as far as reading and understanding some good key components to the system, but they were trying to figure out how to do it perfect, and that's a big difference from people who just want to listen, go home, and they kind of halfway do things, and they teach the techniques a little bit light. They didn't really pay attention to exactly how we set up bands or chains. They didn't really pay attention to the purpose of why we use bands and chains. It's like, oh, if they do speed work with this, it works for them, they're fast. Well, understanding our execution, understanding the reason why we do something leads to having a higher level of success with it, right? And so that was the whole thing with CrossFit, with athletes and coaches that came to us from CrossFit. We're like, oh, I'm like, this is the group. Like, this is it. If anybody's going to carry it on, this is it. And that's what you want. Any system can look bad if people, are half-assing it, right? So having a system where people who are involved want to pay it respect by digging deep into it, that's huge. And obviously that's what you want. If you were Lou, that's what you'd want. If you're CrossFit, that's what you want. So that was a great thing about those courses. Got to see some people who were in really good shape do some cool things, try some things that humbled them, which got them excited, which is sweet. Anytime you see someone who gets humbled, get excited, you're like, oh yeah, I like them. Like that's who you want to work with, right? So just awesome experience. Got to meet.
Sorry,
I just got to meet a bunch of people I liked and you have respect for, and it's funny because people ask me, like I always tell you, like Jesse, like so like who are some of your favorite coaches? I'm like, you wouldn't know them. Well, so I'm like, don't look on social media for the person with the biggest numbers. That's not my favorite. Like my favorite are the people who are constantly evolving, constantly trying to learn, and really have a true passion to deliver at the highest level to their people, right? And which means sometimes they're a high level coach, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're on their way up and they're not there yet, but the effort they put into to really give as much as they can to the people they train, and the effort they put into to learn is huge. And it's there, and there's only a matter of time before they're that coach. So I have a high appreciation for that.
What did that look like heading out there? Like, did they just reach out? Did CrossFit reach out and be like, hey, do you want to come check this thing out that we're going to?
I think that's how it went down. It was like, hey, we're gonna do a thing at Westside, and like, you're a powerlifter guy, right? And I was like,
we're going to Ohio. Huh? Get in.
Like, dude, I was like, yeah, I'll be there. I don't know what the fuck playing ticket costs. I'll be there.
Yeah, he's a big guy. He can go.
Yeah.
And what? Yeah. So what? That because that's right. Like that was the original time CrossFit stepped foot into Westside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was it? Because of 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days. No, I think we came in on Friday because they were doing speed squats in the morning. I think it was 3 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I showed up and there's probably, 7 guys that are speed squatting more than anybody has in the bar anyway. And then you throw on a couple 100 pounds of extra band tension and they're going faster up and down. And it was just like, everybody's like, ew. How? And you're just like, ooh, and I was like, this is sick. It was like,
I always use this explanation. I'm like, you ever done an EMOM before a squats? You're like, oh yeah. Was it hard? Oh yeah. I'm like, okay, so if you take a 1,200 pound squatter, the first week, the lightest week, is 900 pounds, and they're doing 12 sets of 2 with 30-second rest periods. So it's not even EMOM. You don't get a full minute. Cut that in half. Now see how you feel. So that's kind of
cool. Don't forget, put 1,200 pounds of force into the bar on both reps.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you're like, oh, okay.
But that's the thing, though. You look at 350 to 400 pound men doing this, and like, that's good shape for a 350 to 400 pound man to move that fast and have that short of a rest period. And I think that's where, a lot of people from CrossFit saw that and was like, hey, we do EMOMs. We know what this feels like. We know what they're doing. We see what they're doing. And, Louis saying like, this helps with speed and conditioning. Like, okay, I get the point. Look at that big guy moving that. That's impressive that they can handle that and recover, So there's some, obviously correlation that made it a little bit easier for people to palate. And I think it was just a great combination. I had a good time back in those days.
And the system's based off math.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like our whole gig is that it's based off math.
Yeah.
So when you finally see somebody else who talks about the power equation and talks about a few things and you're like, oh, it's the same stuff. It's based off math.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's do it. Let's see where the interplay lies and have at it. It's kind of a good deal that way. Talking the same language, just with a different outcome because you're not worried about a gymnastic component. Thank God.
Yeah.
And then what do you guys do through the weekend? Pizza both days?
I honestly forget. I mean, we did a whole box squat thing. We spent like probably half a day box squatting because everybody had to get their turn and go through the thing and get some reps and do some stuff. And then we did a bunch of sled work. And, you know, Curtis had to take the wagon around and he like didn't hear right. So he went like, you know, 2 miles with the fucking thing, you know, and came back to shot. And everybody's like, you went where? And he was like, you told me to go. And it was pretty great. And, you know, a bunch of like walking good morning stuff and a bunch of, and then we did like a whole day on the bench, I think. And then accessory work for the back and that. And then we did a whole day on deads, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was kind of, you know, it was like
so for you, actually, this was kind of a stepping stone.
Is that what?
Because you eventually got, obviously, one of your athletes into Westside.
It's the Yeti one, buddy.
So for you, this was actually a little bit, because this wasn't too long before you got Abby into Westside. I tell people, I mean, to me, it almost seems harder to get somebody into Westside than it does the games. You know, that's an amazing accomplishment. So, you know, Abby, you know, formerly Grove, you know, Abby Dickerson now. So take her through that. So you got to train Abby. Yeah. She went to Westside. What was that? What was that like?
Well, I think that gig at Westside was like 2010 or something, right? So that was like just before she left to do that. So she came in the gym in 2007 at 18, and she could bench for reps 70-pound dumbbells. I mean, just a little girl who played soccer, probably 120 pounds. And I was like, you're the strongest person here. These dumbbells too, yeah, but like I should, you know, fuck, I'm twice as heavy as you at least, you know, like this makes sense. But you know, for her, it was weird. She was really, really super strong girl. So you know, I don't think we did anything fantastic. She just has talent. You know, that's all. You know, we didn't mess her up. Showed her the right stuff, put her in the right positions, exposed her to the right amount of volumes, and you know, it wasn't. You know, she was always really happy to do all the stuff, and she just wanted to always do stuff. She wasn't a super picky athlete or wasn't super like motivated by the outcome. She just wanted to do the cool stuff that was hard and people were doing and having a fun time doing. And so it just worked. You know, it's one of those things that just like it, because she's so talented, like the stuff we put her through just made her super strong. Yeah.
Well, you were going off, you talk about, most of us use Book of Methods, and to talk about this pamphlet I just heard about here a couple days ago. So I don't even know what this pamphlet is. Oh, you found it. Nice.
I found it. I went through some shit last night because I don't know, I was looking for a thing because of what we're doing, and I was like, no fucking way. The pamphlet. You remember these, Shane?
Wow. It's been
Paul Childress, you know, and friggin' I don't know who this, but they're like these little ass books. They're just like in, you know, and you're like, okay, week 1 for the Circa Max band and chain phase. Use 25% for 2 sets of 3 reps to 20-pound chain per side. If you blah blah blah, and you just follow the shit.
I've never seen those.
You know, the squat manual is the squat manual is tiny. The bench manual is huge. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that, but squats it's like do squats, and you're like, okay. And yeah, it's got some pictures of these guys who were looking huge, and you know, and it's just you know whatever, it's, you know, doing the guy things, right? But it's but yeah, we just use those books and all the videos and all the articles I could get my hands on from Louis at the time. You know, like my favorite article, How to Bench 500 Easy. I'll read that one. You know, I never made it there. Fuck, you know,
I've got a couple of minutes.
3 paragraphs. You know, this is Louis. You know, it's like train on percents, and then you're gonna want to do a dynamic effort day, which is sub maximal weights, maximal speed. And you're going to want to do max every day, and you mix those up, and then do some special exercises. And we recommend a warm up with some band extensions, and do that. And you're like, 500 easy, huh? Can't wait. You know? I mean, it's a great. It's literally like a 1-pager, and you're just like, that's fabulous.
Some of that stuff is cultural though. Like, man, some of the videos, like those old VHS videos, like they are worth a watch. Like the content, some of it is like pretty outdated now, and it's interesting to see where they started. Like, when you see the number 4 bands, like just looped under the mono, so they're not girth hitched yet. So they go to get about halfway down, and the bands just go slack.
Yeah,
and just that sort of stuff. And just I remember hearing which video it was, but you can hear guys. You're like, man, it sounds like a couple guys are like fighting in the background. And then you can hear them yell. They're like, oh, they're definitely fighting in the background. And then the camera gets knocked over, and someone comes and straightens the camera, because basically all you're watching is them doing the like workout, and you watch them do it for like 20 minutes. And then it cuts to like Lou sitting on a chair in his like basketball shorts, like talking about it.
They're massive. And then imagine you've got a lady who's going to spend about 100 hours of doing that with you at least, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, babe, you're the one.
What I thought was pretty
For a
cool.
nerdy dude who just wants to get huge to hang out and do that, but not, that's not the couch time properly. You know?
What I thought was super cool with Abby was we got to work with Abby, obviously, on staff. You know, she was a staff member for a long time, and you know, she was a great trainer, you know, before she went to Westside. But it seemed like I was working a gig with her in Boise, and we ended up spending a few days together because she was judging. So we went straight from Boise seminar to the games, and at this point, I had just gotten into some conjugate stuff, so I'm being the nerd, just picking her brain because watching her at seminars, and she's like, that person needs more good mornings. That person needs more reverse hypers. And it's like, good Lord, like you just get a PhD in exercise science in 6 months at Westside. Like what happened? You got to see that kind of firsthand, Jesse, of like who she was before she went to Westside. And then like what sort of athletes and / coach, like what did you notice after seeing her after Westside?
Oh, for sure. I mean, to be fair, the biggest change was probably just like emotional, I don't know, stability or just like maturity. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like I said, it's not like she didn't take the training here seriously. She tried hard and had fun with it, but it was like, you know, she rose to the occasion. She's at fucking Westside. Like, don't play these games. We're here to get, you know, you're at Mecca. Like, don't half-ass it. And it's not that she never didn't try hard enough. It was just kind of like, you can talk to Lou. So ask him your question, get the right answer, and then do what he says.
Well, there's a couple of different things, right? Like one, you're in front of Lou, but two, you're in a place that you're only there until you're not there. Meaning like, yeah, if you keep putting out in your workouts, you keep evolving, you'll stay. If you don't listen, you don't train hard enough, you don't read the things Lou tells you to read, you don't implement things he tells you to, you're going to be gone. So when you're in a room full where everybody's on the line at all times, and they could be there for years, and all of a sudden one day Lou or the team can say you're out because their personalities changed and they don't have it anymore. They're not trained as hard as they should, or they're complaining, or they're doing things that hold this group back. It leads to a different atmosphere. It's one thing when you're the one in a gym, when you're the person who trains harder than everybody else and you have this goal. It's a whole other thing when you walk into a room with 30 people that are all trying to be world record holders and do something that no human's ever done before. That's a different atmosphere. And, you know, I saw her when she first got there to when she left. And you're right, Jesse, like her personality, like not that she wasn't unconfident, but there's a confidence level, there's a maturity level. There was, she learned so much, I think, in that time that it also means that you also listen more, right? Because now you realize there are people who have this knowledge base. And so it does change people for sure.
Yeah. No, I remember I was lucky enough to get the chance to work with her a few times at Rogue while she was still training out there, just randomly enough met up, you know. And it was just great. I mean, she just swole up. You know, her arms were huge. Her back was huge. It was like, oh, this is rad. You know, it's just like, way to go, dude. And then when we visited for the week, Jess, and just hung out there with her and did the thing, you know, it's just kind of you know, it was such a role reversal, right? Because, you know, I'm a kid in a candy store and obviously not in the right condition for that shit, you know. And she's just like literally at home in her gym doing the thing. And it was like, yeah, nerd, do it like this. And it's like, thanks, Abby. You know, it was really great. You know, it was really, really cool to kind of watch that little flip happen, you know, from, you know, it was dope. I mean, that's all you can, that's the best, you know, from a coach friend, you know, person you could get as far as I'm concerned, you know, like we set her up for success that way and she went and dominated and that was that.
Well, think about that. That's actually an awesome story that most people never get to tell because most people don't provide the right atmosphere and the right layout for beginning athletes. You took an athlete that was good, you know, honed a bunch of stuff in, got her to the point where she went to, you know, Westside, and you went from somebody who you had to tell them everything they had to do and explain everything to someone who you can bounce ideas back and forth with and learn stuff with and evolve together, you know, which is pretty sweet, you know, really.
I mean, put it like that actually is really cool. Thanks, Shane.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate goal as a coach, right? I would love for all my teens at some point to outlift me and outsmart me and all the stuff we do. I think that's the goal.
That's the ultimate goal that I think most coaches never reach, you know, in all honesty. I think it says a lot about you, Jesse, a lot about a coach that can do that, you know, and I'm looking at like the other three of you guys in a room and you guys all are the same way. And there's not, you know, I can be a room with 100 coaches and not find one other person who's like that.
You
know?
can also be pretty lousy at it and then it doesn't take nearly as much to have your lifters that lift you.
I think it says more about Abby.
Yeah, there's special people
She's
we come across in our lives. And you got
right.
to be thankful we get that opportunity for sure.
Yeah.
She's just a wonderful combination of attitude, moxie, natural ability. You know, it's fantastic.
Yep.
Well, it was a crazy. I mean, that for me was a unbelievable opportunity, right? Because if she hadn't made it to Westside, I mean, the two of us weren't getting there to go hang out for a week on our own. Hey, big gulps, eh?
The Jessies are here. Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, and that was, we were staying with her and Jimmy Pacifico at the time, and it was an experience, especially as a Canadian. Just guns everywhere. It's like there's a gun under the futon in the other room. Is anyone missing a gun that fell down, or is it just that's where it lives?
That's how we do here, Jeff.
Yeah, totally. You're like, do you want it? You're like, well, a little bit now. Can I just carry it around like in my hand? Yeah. Well, that was a crazy, that was an amazing time and experience.
Yeah.
You said you did 2 level 1s out there back-to-back weekends, and we squeezed in like Westside between your weekends.
Is that how that worked?
Yeah, because what happened was you went out. You're like, bro, you're just like, I'm teaching 2 level 1s out in Columbus. Like, fly out here. Abby says we can go to Westside for be there for the week. And you're like, well, if she says it's cool. And then, because I flew in on I think the Saturday night into Columbus, and then I was like, well, when I was at my the Westside seminar that I'd been to before that, I was like, I met this guy there, Shane. He's got a gym down in Cincinnati. Said I could come down for the day, and so while you were teaching the Sunday of your L1, I ripped down to Sweatshop, which I mean it was crazy. Like I just reached out to Shane from the seminar and was like, hey, I got your number at this seminar. Thinking about coming down. Can I come in to hang out? He's like, yeah, sure, for sure. And then kind of hit and miss getting hold of him again until I showed up. And was like, drove down. I was like, man, I hope he's there. And Shane spent I think it was 6 or 8 hours with me, just the two of us on the Sunday, in the gym. Where I'm I'm a far cry from having any sort of gift or genetic potential, or be like, man, this is a pleasure to work with this athlete. Because some guys I have a lot of questions, and spent the whole day there, and it was crazy. I spent all Sunday and then drove back up Sunday night, caught up with you, and then we went Monday morning went for the breakfast, because I think is that Monday breakfast you're like, hey bro, don't say shit, don't say anything in there.
We go for breakfast. Bob Evans.
Yeah.
Right by the mall.
I was like, I won't say nothing.
That was direct from Abby.
No
that was direct, that was hidden intel. She was like, yeah, we're gonna have breakfast with Louie at Bob Evans, and literally just don't talk.
Yeah.
And I was like, thanks, 100%. Ab, we'll do.
Yeah, super easy. Yeah. I will not say a word.
Were there a bunch of other lifters there? Usually,
probably
4 to 6 or so.
people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, someone ordered. They didn't want coffee, tea. He's like, no. You're like, oh, I wonder what he's gonna order. He's like, Diet Coke. You're like, yeah, let's start the day with a Diet Coke.
Yeah, 2 eggs and a Diet Coke. You're like, you're gonna go. I'm glad we got breakfast in, boys. With a
couple of toe touches. Let's get this.
Yeah. Super random.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man.
Some good conversations were had at those breakfasts, though. Had some great conversations there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, but once you do it enough times, I'm sure the advent of a couple of random dudes would curtail any normalness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've had the opportunity now with Abby. You've had some other athletes now that you're working with. We'll talk about some of just the regular folks too, because I think that's one of the cool things that we all do is we've had a unique opportunity to work with some high level athletes, and then we also run our regular CrossFits. But you're working with an American record holder now, currently in the skier, which I didn't know they had those, but an American record rower, and she started as a CrossFitter. Name's Rachel. Run us through just her little story and what her training kind of looks like.
She's masters. I think I'm not going to route her out on age, but she's not 20. But it was probably, I forget, pre-quarantine for sure, maybe 2016, 2017. She just rode well. She was fit. I mean, don't get me wrong, she could do pull-ups and not particularly good at handstand push-ups, but she could do them. She was a fit lady, right? And had exercised all her life, was a triathlete when she was young, and got into some lifting stuff, and she would do a few meets, I think. And her husband's similar, a hell of a cyclist and just really into it. And I looked at her one day and I was like, you should check out rowing. I think you'd be really good at it. She was like, okay. And then a couple years go by, and then it's quarantine stuff, and it was like home workout stuff. And she was like, and I put together I don't know, just kind of it happened where there was probably 15 people in the gym who just had their own rowers. And it was like, all right, I'll write some fucking rowing workouts, right? So I put together the rowing workouts on its own little spreadsheet. It was shared with the people that had rowers, so it wasn't like a broadcasted thing, like get your own rowing machine or you're out of the club or whatever. It was just kind of, really under the table. And this is, I know these guys got this, and we're going to do the gym's workout. We're also going to do this fucking rowing thing. It'll be great. And so we got just a gang of records off that, just as a group, Yeah. And then we got back into the gym, and then she just randomly broke the American record in the 500. And it was like, what? And we looked at her, and she was fast. It was it was 1:35.2 or something. And you were like, shit, that's quick. Let's look it up and see what the record is. And I was like, it's higher than that, And so we submitted the score, and that was that. And it was a complete accident, right? We just did the thing. And then she broke it again a little while later. And then she started hey, let's do this thing for real. Let's train for this, And we put together a proper weight training program to benefit what was happening. And then I took the writing of the rowing workouts more seriously, and everybody else had stopped doing them because they're just too hard and it was drudgery at some point. And then she qualified for Crash Bees and did really good at that. And then, once we had kind of that initial run of success, which is great. And doesn't, like I said, I was butthurt for a minute, but then she promptly fired me and hired actual rowing coaches. Which is cool because I don't have a complete program. I have I'm just writing a spreadsheet with workouts in it, and I'm do that. But then she started actually hey, I want to go compete and do worlds and do real big stuff. So she found, I should know their name better. Really nice guy. Talked to him on the phone for a while. We agree on training stuff, which is always fun. Stephen Pryor is his name. And so she hired those guys, and they do actual rowing stuff. They have you go on Zoom and they watch your technique while you do the rowing that you're rowing for the day. And it's, massive interval training stuff. It's way more than I'd ever programmed, but it's working. And so she's shaved a few seconds off the 500 since then in about a year and a half. And now she's just getting into the ski erg and beating people, apparently. Everybody.
You still do special strength stuff with her.
Yeah.
Right?
So now that we're in the off season for the rowing thing, like I said, Steven, he's a good dude. We talked about you guys have all read the multi-year training cycle stuff, the all that jazz. So we're in off season right now, so we get to regain stuff that you spend in season. So we're doing all the things that are kind of epi and peri, the rowing stroke, and looking at the movements that she can't currently do. Overhead squats are really tough right now, so we're gonna rebuild that pattern from zero because it just kind of got fleshed with all the rowing. And a handful of other things, of course, but that sticks in my head right out the gate. Yeah, we do that, get that going for maybe 5 more months until it's 5 months out for heavy rowing season. And then we'll cut most of that training, keep the accessories that make sense. And then she'll blitz she has, I think it's just over under 10,000 meters of intervals daily when it's row time. So it's just a ton of work, So yeah.
Yeah. Some of that rowing is crazy volume.
Yeah.
I think what's cool about it is
it's wicked to me. It's wicked to see it because you look at it and you're like, guys, she's training for the 500.
Yeah.
So how come we got to do 10,000 intervals a day? But at the same point in time, I'd love to pontificate, but she's faster. She's a few seconds faster, and that's a big deal when you're at 90-second times.
Yeah.
And that's so it's hey, whatever. It doesn't. I don't need to know that because I'm not a super rowing coach. I'm a dude that knows conjugate system and CrossFit, and works pretty good.
Well, it's really interesting if you think about it. When you got into the westside system, you were probably whoa, volume's high on this. because probably higher than what you were doing before. I don't know if that's would be correct to say or not, but most people I put into training, that's kind of the thing. Maybe not for you, because you're being a coach going into a gym, a little bit different. People usually love a gym and they train real, train real hard. But
yeah, I was real young and yeah, just did tons of stuff. Yeah.
But like CrossFit, to be a competitor, even local competitor, a lot of people put a lot more volume than they expect. Conjugate, a lot more volume than a lot of times people expect. Once you get towards the top, you're doing volume amounts that most people wouldn't have thought they were going to get into. Obviously it's like laid out correctly so you can do that volume and you feel great afterwards and you don't feel beat up and you don't create movement pattern faults or dysfunction in joints. But ultimately, if you're among the top, you probably have a decent amount of volume coming in,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's one of those things that seems like I don't know. It's like I said, it seems tricky, but I get right. If you're training a runner and you're going to want to be super fast, you're not going to run 1,000 meters total. You're going to have to run a little more than that. You, in fact, a runner, yeah, it makes sense.
I think a big teaching point here for other trainers too, and Louis talked about this even with just training the youth, is looking for what your people are strong at. Like she may have never even thought about that rowing had it not been for doing those intervals. And here she is now, like, think about how focused her training is and probably has more purpose in what she wants to do. And that's all, because you were observing and taking a look at records where people aren't looking at records and don't know. That's she could have missed that opportunity.
Jesse, when you're talking about like, yeah, the volume's real high. Like why is she doing 10,000 meters when she's doing a 500 meter row? And you're like, but she's faster. Well, there's also technique. There's an accumulation of volume over how many years. What I'd find interesting is if you and that guy could work together really closely, it'd be interesting to see, because I bet you that the volume would change and the way you do distances change. Because we were always looking at like, you're going a little bit farther than the distance, so you have the endurance to go that distance. You're going a little bit less, so you have that power output and that speed. From there, it's like, you eventually want to start doing other things besides the rowing, because just doing the rowing, you're losing capacities in other places, and those usually break down the structure, right? If the structure breaks down, then you're not as efficient, and you're using more energy to do the same amount of output, where the magic's going to happen down the road, right? For people to really drop those rowing and ski erg times, people like you, Jesse, are going to be the ones that are going to make the difference. It's not really going to be the technique coaches at that point, because they're going to do the same things forever. Like I've worked with a lot of boxers and fighters, and every boxing coach comes in and wants the athletes trained the exact same way they've been trained since, the early 1900s. And it just is what it is. But it's like, at some point, realize everything evolves. Everything. Even NASCAR, even though they only turn left and go one direction around a track, it still doesn't look the same as it did in the 40s. You know what I'm saying? Like the original ones going on dirt and the types of engines and cars they had compared to nowadays, technology is quite a bit different. They might, have not looked like they changed much over the years, last 10 years, but they have. And that stuff will evolve. And I think that's where CrossFit and that's where the conjugate system both come in, is because both those things are already affecting other sports now. And I think we're just getting to the point where that's just going to get dug deeper and deeper into, where eventually someone's going to accept it. You might have a athlete like works with someone like either you guys or any of you guys, and then they say, hey, look, I competed at such a higher level than everybody else. I know how good this stuff is. And if they become a coach down the road, then they're going to open their mind to other coaches to do things similar, because they're like, no, I want to see where this goes, because I've had a similar experience to this. So I think we're on the cusp of some stuff changing for athletes,
I think
to tie that's my hope down the road is with like working with Steven a little bit, is that he'll like the amount of special exercises that we put Rachel through. Like right now we're like purely rebuilding for probably 3 weeks or something like that to get some stuff rolling. But then, I do a ton of isometrics with her, and we do a ton of like her back isn't super strong, so she's a good morning type that we got to keep pounding away at those. And we work up the GHD sit up like crazy. I mean, she can do kind of insane volumes on those, over 100 reps a few days, 3 days a week sometimes, and not get sore from it. Just like, this is what I do, and you're like, okay. So there's a few. There's like kind of this handful of places that I see the benefit in the rowing, not just exactly in the power production, but in the all-around development of the athlete picture, because rowing is so only a couple of things, and so I guess what I'm saying is that if you're a rowing coach and you've got somebody like that in your midst who never has rowed on the water, never was part of a crew team as a youth, like did fitness stuff and broke your records rowing no more than 2,000 meters in any session because the weight training was high enough, and and her technique's better now. No joke. I mean, the guys are really good at watching the technique and making improvements, which is really cool. And I never really did much of that. I just wrote the workouts and left her alone because she trained at home a lot. So, I mean, it was kind of one of those like, okay, cool. Like that's a good fix. But it seems like, when she comes back from the off season and whoomp, here we go. I can already do all this stuff. My hope is that they go, what happened? Because all the other people we've got, they're just rowing their butts off every day. And you come back, stronger, leaner, harder, ready to get chomping at the bit to get the meters done. And, what's that about? And you go, yeah, it's probably the weight training. And the right exercises and the right cycles and all that stuff,
And that's how you do it. If you can get her to match or beat her time before the off season that she had, before the off season started, then it's like, cool. We either start from the same place when she hit her peak and now we get to evolve from there, or she's ahead and she wasn't rowing. So this shows you something. You guys work on technique. Let's try to figure out some new things with the training so she doesn't have to have as much volume. And I'm a thing, trust me, like we do a lot of volume, but we do it in so many different variations that it doesn't beat you up. It makes you well-rounded. But I'm also a firm believer that one more rep than what's needed is wear and tear on the body for no reason whatsoever. So if the 10,000 meters works, or, a day works, well, if she could run the same times off of 8,000 meters, be foolish not to do that. Because you look at the extra volume after 1 year, 5 years, 10 years is dramatic. And that does lead to issues, right?
And you could take that 10 minutes and put it in other exercises that she needs to benefit more from.
100%.
I mean, that's what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's pretty cool to be able to be in a spot. I mean, especially through CrossFit, to expose people to sport, because I think for sure for myself, I think at least, Chris, Jesse as well, is just that I'm not sure that without CrossFit, we'd have had the exposure to all the modalities that we got through CrossFit. I mean, I was running and climbing before CrossFit and had never put my hands on a barbell at all. Like I'd use some dumbbells in the gym, and then just being able to be a coach and facilitate that. We're like, hey, you appear to have a talent for rowing. Like, let's exploit that, like let's see where that can go. And weightlifting, powerlifting, strongman. I mean, I think all three of those sports there really should be very thankful for the existence of CrossFit, because I think CrossFit has fed those three sports more than any other thing. And blown all of them up. I mean, I know a lot of federations now are like, oh, we've got all of the equipment we can possibly buy, and we still have, funds kind of piling up because of, meets sell out and everyone's showing up at these things now, instead of like, 15 dudes in a parking lot outside of a grocery store,
Well, the nice thing too, CrossFit gave everybody a good solid base so they can go into these things without getting injuries, because they're well-rounded, they're in good condition, they're hitting stuff from all different angles. It helps them get successful into these arenas pretty quick. So they're seeing someone else who maybe has been competing in Olympic lifting for 2 years, and they go in and beat them right off the bat. And they're like, this is all they do. Well, yeah, because, get into their problem later. They don't know how to train properly for it, but that's okay. But you also took someone from a different sport, came in and beat someone from a sport that's exactly what they train for. I always say to people, it's very interesting to me when nobody wants to change the way they train. When someone who doesn't even compete in their sport comes and beats them in their sport they train for forever, that really tick me off. Okay, like first thing I'm going to do is like question everything in my existence, what I've been doing, So, it does change it. And you're right. It's been a big feeder for those three. But that also shows, same thing for for rowing, or someone who's a cyclist or an ultra endurance runner, anything different like that. They can't say the course they've been doing and just rely on genetics to be the difference between who wins or not. Like who has the better genetics or who has the better head on their shoulders. Like that's your winner. You guys are all doing the same thing. Well, at some point you think people are going to want to evolve and want to guarantee the win. And that's what Westside did a long time ago, is they found and developed and evolved techniques and things that weren't really well popular and known. And they went deep down a rabbit hole, At some point, these coaches are these specialist coaches, specialists meaning like technique for like a rowing or a cyclist or anything like that, boxing coaches, kickboxing, all that. Eventually, they're going to start to see these evolutions, or their athletes are going to get beat by someone who has someone like us to help them. And that's going to be when the game changes. But it's interesting to see that I think the two biggest leading factors for that worldwide is really going to be CrossFit and the conjugate system that Westside brought forth. And you look at the athletes that they're producing, you look at like, you watch Westside athletes, it's like you put them in something explosive that's not necessarily their thing, they're dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. You watch a CrossFit athlete go into anything endurance-wise, and what they get from that. They've had so much variety that it doesn't matter. You give them a ultra marathon, is it flat? Cool. Is it hilly? Fine. You have to go over obstacles? Whatever. It doesn't really matter to a CrossFitter. They've had so many different types of intensities, from short, fast, like Fran, to, you look at hero wads, to everything's available, right? Or if you have some strongman stuff where it's moving, heavy objects slowly for, a long period of time, there's all these different areas that they go in. They make them better mentally as an athlete, make them more well-rounded, and they're not going to be gun shy about it. It's harder to transfer someone over. It's like, oh yeah, you run 10Ks, well, you should run 100 miles. Cool. It's like,
CrossFitters are less reluctant.
Exactly, and that's what you need in any athlete.
Yeah, happy to try, happy to be there and give it a try.
Yeah, Kalipa and Briggs.
Yeah, we cut.
We're top 5 in the world.
45 minutes off one of our guys' 31-mile races in like 9 months.
Yeah,
just like, oops, exactly that experience. Just run his whole life, didn't really do stuff. It wasn't like he was a savage. I mean, I think a guy could thruster 95 pounds for a 1 rep. But it it worked. He didn't change his running at all, and just threw 3 workouts on top of it a week, and we scaled the shit out of everything for the guy. And he's a good ass dude, but that's a humongous change in time.
Yeah. Jesse, what kind of isometrics? That's something I mean, outside of some midline, I've really, gone in and out with isometrics. What kind of isometrics are you doing with her?
There were 12 positions. That's the beauty of a spreadsheet. The few that stick out of my head, we identified like the bottom third of a front squat is like the most non-rowing position, because you're still, because her back needs to get strong, right? So, but the pulling back isn't the same as the pushing back, if that makes sense, So you're in the front squat, you're like pushing on that shit, versus like pulling against it, like in a deadlift. So we did a ton of work against isometrics in like the front squat type motion to develop the pushing back.
Hoffman style, like going into pins, or
into pins. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, she's down the bottom and then just kung into the pin and just sit there for it's fucking brutal.
How long? What are your time domains in sets for that?
It's exactly what they say. 3 second exertions, 3 sets of 5 reps.
You wonder if you got similar strength, similar size people, if you did like that Moss wrestling, I know it sounds really weird, but your feet are against the plank.
Basically, we rigged that up for,
Exactly. And it's like stuff like that could be like one of those things that off-season fun is to do with, competitors against each other, but they're also, doing some isometric, because if you're getting someone who's really close in strength, like what's gonna, that's interesting.
Well, the way I see that catch moment on the rower, that's the rowing is isokinetic in a way, right? You flex as hard as you want, the thing's going to give you whatever speed it's going to give you, right? So it might change minorly, but in a way, it's isokinetic, right? So we set her up in that catch position, which is basically the same thing as mass wrestling, and had her do isometrics at that spot too, because she's really trap heavy. So it was all about for her to get her fucking arms straight and find her lats in the catch. So we were working on that really hard in the isometric position for that. We did the front squat one. We did an overhead squat one into pins too. That's just nasty. That's just not anything like rowing at all. It's just nasty. From the bottom, boom, into the pins, right? We did a rack deadlift version at top quarter, because that was like, when your hip gets to that moment where you're going to finish that hip extension in the rowing, that was close enough to how we could figure it to in the pins. Worked good for that. I think there were a few more on the sheet that we were doing, so we but a fair amount. I mean, it was probably 2 days a week she was hitting 2 or 3 different positions, and I rotated them around as we went through stuff.
Super cool.
It's just one of those things where it was just like, like there's these, if we're going to train those 15% strength of the joint angle, like let's just go ahead and find those spots and fucking smash them, because when you're rowing 500s, like dude, you've got, it's 50 strokes or 65 strokes, you're done, so you're just going to slide in and just mash that spot,
Does she have any issues with her shoulders, or what are the common things you see with rowing? Is like shoulders, low back. What areas do you see? Do they have problems with, or is it not too common?
No, I mean, to be fair, like that's kind of the reason rowing's awesome is it's fairly, I mean, it's kind of innocuous in a way. There's no pounding. There's no, you know, I mean, as long as you hold your body stiff while you do the thing, usually it's like elbow tendonitis. You get early arm bend, and you know you get pissy back and stuff from a little bit from that stuff, but mostly it's elbows. Her neck is a little bit weird because she rows with her neck. I mean, that's like the whole focus this entire off season is to get that to stop happening, which is, I think, you know, it's like a, you know, it's like an early arm bend and a clean. It's going to stick around, you know, for your life. And you're going to work really hard to get rid of that, and that's how that goes. And then there you go, you know. And when you try your hardest, and you try your hardest, it'll come back.
Comes back, yeah.
That's just how, you know, so be it, right? But it, you know, hopefully if we get that weeded out this off season, that would be the big win, I think, for this year, you know, this cycle. So yeah,
cool.
We're doing a bunch of serratus interior stuff and a bunch of lat like distracted row stuff to make sure she stays engaged with bands, that kind of stuff.
Nice. And you've also been doing just recently, which has been cool. Seems like they got on Tudor Magda's team. You've been doing some work with him, which I think he just finished with like 50th in the world in the quarterfinals.
He got 15th.
50 in the world or region?
In the Northwest. Yeah, in the world. Yeah, I think he was 15th in the world.
So still 15th. Yeah. So he's on his way. And that kid is, I mean, God, what did he, like 312 thruster or something? And
it's a huge thruster.
It's insane. I had the opportunity to meet him. Super humble kid. Seems like he's great to work with. What's that been like?
Super rewarding, straight out. I mean, to be fair, like I don't know if I would do it for another dude. Like Tudor's really that kind of guy. You know, he's just one of those. He's a great guy. I don't know what to say. Like you said, humble, but he's also, but he's 20, and so it's like, you know, it's like my kids are only 15. I mean, you know, they're right there. Like you want to give the kid a noogie when you see him. You know, you little guy, you know, get over here, you know, and then he just trashes anything you throw at him, and you're like, I love this guy, you know, and he's all ears, and he wants to see what's going on and wants to learn the techniques and, you know, talk about the stuff and, you know, what are we doing with food, and Carrie's, you know, reshaped his whole nutrition front, which has brought his health back big time back online, so his trainability is way higher. Like hats off for her for that. That's a tremendous win. And yeah, and the team is really fun. I mean, it was really great to work with them all. So it's just kind of a big group effort. It's great.
So you helped do the just kind of the framework for his programming, but then your job primarily recently has just been kind of game day. So you were actually down in Wadapalooza with him, right? Yeah,
we were Wadapalooza, and then we did the open. We did the open, and then we did the quarterfinals as well. Yeah. Wadapalooza was a lot of fun. That was a wild. I don't go to these things, right? I don't, you know, I do the CrossFit Games and that's that and super, but I don't do, you know, I don't go to that stuff. I don't go to garage games or whatever the shit, you know? And it was actually a pretty cool event. I mean, as far as that goes. What's
like run us through that? What did you do some strategy? What else are you doing with them on those?
Yeah. Well, because a lot of that, like, you know, I look over the spreadsheet from time to time to kind of see where his numbers are at and what he's up to and what he's doing. And so you're like looking at the workout and you're like, how's a kid going to do? You know, and you're like, okay, I think he's going to, you know, crush this, or, you know, whatever, it's going to be a good workout for him, or, you know, so you're thinking strategy thoughts, you're thinking, you know, explain the pinch points, you're thinking explain, you know, how it's going to feel. You're thinking, you know, a lot of, like there's a lot of emotionality that goes into those weekends. You know what I mean? Like when you know, I mean, I haven't really competed since like 2010, you know, I've like fully shifted away from like Jesse the athlete to Jesse the coach, you know, but like, so you kind of forget about that a little bit, where you could do a thing and be really bummed, or you could get super nervous about a thing, or you can get really jacked up, you know, and I mean, it's like, whoa. And it was like, yeah, you know, and because I've been through all that personally, especially when place kicking. I mean, you talk about fucking nervous, my guy. Like, yeah, you know, I mean, I have 3 game winners.
Yeah.
Lucky enough to do that.
Don't fuck it up. It's a lose-lose situation. Like either you make it.
It's a pretty wild moment. You know, you're at the away game. You know, you got the bus ride home that's 3 hours away, and you know it's 40 degrees and raining, and you're gonna run out there cold to kick a 46-yard winner in high school. Yeah, you're nervous. You know, there's no fucking way that thing. You know, it's like, here goes nothing, boys. You know, and you just send it, and it worked out. And you're like, that's incredible. But you know, so that kind of nervousness. You know, it's like the same time you go, you know, Jesse, same time you come down for that first big squat. You know, when you're going to uncork for something, you haven't even tried it in the gym, but today's the day. I mean, your fucking heart is going to jump out of your chest. You know, and so how do you It's crazy, you know, but there you go into the bar and you get her done, right? It's weird. So you talk to these kids, you know, it gets 20, you know, he's done it for a while, but it's different, you know, he's stepping into a realm that he hasn't, I mean, he's been there a little bit, but not the same way that now there's expectation and pressure and stuff. And so you get to talk to that with him, which is, I don't know, it's like I said, it's super rewarding just to be able to be there and be emotional with the dude about how these things go and what it takes to get there, you know, physically sure, mentally sure, but emotionally sure. And it's really cool, you know.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Does that mean potentially a different role at the games this year?
You know, I don't know. I'm going to be down in Pasadena to do that deal, but I really do cherish judging. I mean, no joke. Like I love that gig. Like that's just the crew that's there, the 40 guys and girls they bring down from all over the world to teach. Like those, like I would consider most of that crew my like actual best friends. You know, just because, yeah, it's one. You know, like it. You know, like if you call somebody up and you say, "Hey, I'm going to come out for 2 weeks," and they go, "Overcome with joy, can't wait to see you. I got a room at my parents' house for you. Who's all coming?" Like that's a real friend. Like that's how that works. You know, not like, that's nice. What were the dates again? Let me get back to you on that. I don't know. You know, it's like, okay, thanks for playing. You know, everybody who's there will do that to you. Like, you know, we went to Spain last year, hung with a buddy, Nono, met up with, you know, a couple of other friends. And it's just like, this is totally sick. This is how this works. You know, this is the real deal, you know, like it, you know, because they're all gym owners and they've all been on staff and they've all been in the trenches. And we had, you know, trench dick with the bad shorts that Rogue gave us, Reebok gave us one year. I mean, you know, like the stories of the judging side are epic, you know, we all got coronavirus. I mean, it's been masked, you know, you've been through all this, Chris. I mean, it's epic, you know, so I don't know. You know, I don't know. Yeah, it'll be one of those things where we'll probably have some kind of nightly debrief, you know, as far as how he's doing and what we can talk about and things and stuff. But yeah, I've already emailed them and everything, and they were like, "Yeah, not a problem." And I was like, "Not a problem," and they're like, "Totally not a problem." I was like, "That's amazing. I love this company."
Yeah, well, I can tell you, if I can give you any advice, like you know, I've been back and forth. I was when Carlene competes. You know, one year I tried to do both, and it just wasn't fair to either the staff or the athlete. And after that, it's like, okay, if she goes and special opportunity. There'll always be years to judge. I think having an opportunity to, you know, be there, especially if you're the one that's been there in the past, you know, that's kind of that comfort level for him. I feel like, you know, if you've already built that relationship, that's a special opportunity. And, you know, it is, you always just hang out with the staff on the outer part, you know, the after stuff and try to catch up as best you can. But I totally get it. Yeah. Not working with the staff is always a weird conflict. There's definitely a conflict there when you're not with the team for sure. It's been, we've had way too many stories being up till 5 a.m. setting up rogue rigs because there's no such thing as a rogue team, and no food for a 16-hour work shift, and the whole gamut of.
How often are you can see but can't quite get to?
What's that?
The food that you can see but can't quite get to.
That's right.
The table 100 meters away, and you can't close that gap for the 12 hours that you're down there.
Man, Carson, man, we definitely went through it on a couple of them. It's a pretty well-oiled machine now, and Boz takes good care of everybody now. But
I think I remember checking my phone at when I was at the 2015 games.
Yeah,
and in the underground between the tennis stadium and the soccer stadium, I did 23K.
Oh, that's right. You were down at the games early on too. That's right. Yeah, that's actually I mentioned something with Shane. Yeah,
23K. I think it's like
crazy.
What is it, like 150 meters maybe between the two?
That's too many. Yeah, that's too many trips, bro.
What year did you do the video, Jesse?
Sorry,
what year did you do the video work?
Oh yeah.
That was 2015.
Yeah, because I remember
that was the only year I was actually worked the games. I worked regionals every year from start to finish, and did sectionals before that. But the only year I actually was like there at the games with the team was that 2015 year, I think, because that was the year you guys won. Like you guys had the team third, right? That was
second. Yeah,
second. Sorry. Yep. Yeah, and Carlene was there. I was the same. Carlene was competing that year as well.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where Jesse and I were supposed to meet up a few times. There was like, oh yeah, like it was gonna be no big deal. Like, oh yeah, we'll figure out sometime. We'll meet up, grab some of the eaters, you know, talk for a little bit or whatever. And it's like couldn't meet up, and ran into him one day. He's like, I don't think he was done. I think he was just walking to go somewhere else to work more. But he had his head down, and I'm like, I think I just saw a ghost, because he just looked like a shell of a person just walking, like, what just happened to me? I'm like, you doing okay? He's like, really busy. I got to go to work. I've been working all day. Like, and it's like, oh. Like, I know Jesse's a hard worker, and if Jesse looks like he's worn out, I'm like, ooh, this is bad.
Dude, the heat back then too, and some of those LA, I don't know if that was one of the years, but like the year.
Well, that was that year they had the crazy rain leading into the weekend, and then that was because they did Murph that year, and that was where the humidity in that first 5 feet of the soccer stadium was like insane. Like it was a completely different world, like on that soccer stadium floor versus like the paint never dried. They sprayed the all the logos and bannering on the grass, and they just keep spraying it because it stayed just wet the entire time.
I remember so many athletes that year said when they went down to do like push-ups or anything, like even you're down that low, they just couldn't breathe. Just the humidity was so bad.
That was the year that norovirus blew through the games too.
Yeah,
everybody's just crapping themselves. It was miserable. It was insane, bro. Like athletes, judges, didn't matter. Like I remember I was on the floor for Murph, and we had like 2 people in reserve. I had to leave.
Just like, a hand up.
Yeah, it was one of these, right? Like I'm FUBAR, I need help, and then somebody comes trotting over and like, I really gotta go. And just like out, it was so bad. I mean, it was so bad. People were not, it was bad. That was a tremendous year, Jess.
Oh man,
it's come a long ways, that's for sure.
Tremendous.
Yeah, man, it's a different. Yeah, I can't even imagine. Well, what did you compete then, Jesse? Like, what year was that? You were.
Bro, it was 2008.
Yeah,
it's the Romas. Yeah.
So was that the second year then?
Second year at the ranch. Yeah, we went back in 2009 with the team.
Was that the? Did you hammer the peg? No. What year? What were the workouts?
The peg was 2009 individuals.
Right.
Yep.
That was the first year to qualify, right?
Totally. Oh man, I remember seeing that freaking those pegs come up, and I was like, oh,
right.
The dream. Here's a sledgehammer. Drive these into the ground.
This might get me in trouble. I stole 4 of those rods that year. I literally jacked them, and I took them home, and we went out back where we have it, and we pounded the fuck out of those things way too many times. I finally scrapped them probably 10 years after the fact, but it definitely snuck back in later and stole 4 of those metal things. Beat them out of the ground myself and yarded them out. It was pretty crazy.
The window down in the Focus the whole way home from LA.
That's right.
We're from Aromas. That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, I guess to kind of wrap up here, final thing, we got to talk about some of the athletes. I know you, with some of the things using obviously CrossFit's your primary training modality for your peeps with GPP, just because it does encompass a lot of that conjugate like we've talked about, but a big fan of the special exercises. Talk a little bit about what those mean, when you're training your one-on-ones, and obviously last time that logistically gets a little bit complicated, right? When you've got 15 people in a class prescribing that stuff, but all of us do some personal training, and that's a good opportunity to utilize that. What do you like so much about them?
Yeah, and now you bring it up too, Chris. We do a lot of that stuff actually too in our classes, because
that's cool.
We run proper heavy days. We always have just hey guys, we're going to do front squat for a 1 rep because it's good for you. What else are we going to do? Front squatting for the 1 rep. But you kind of Abby said, you met with Abby and she's like, that person needs good mornings. That person needs, reverse hypers, whatever. In the hour-long class, there's a few people who need all the time just to squat the weight. They're going to front squat 365 for 5. They need time to get to that kind of weight to lift it. But then some people, they are 125 pound squatter, and that's all they've got. And it's going to take them 5 sets to get there. And you do a few down sets, so you hit the right number on Prolipin's chart for the optimum. And then what are we going to do? Then you got to look at them as an athlete, and you can prescribe. You pick 3 or 4 different moves based on kind of the kind of different blocks people fall into. They got your backside is weak, or you don't have good knee control, or you don't have this kind of flexibility is really holding you back in the lift, or it's your midline, or it's your back or your front, or whatever it is, right? So you can give them a handful of assistance exercises based on that, within that heavy day setting, and it usually works out really pretty good, in a pressing day, or a, say it's a max effort dipping day, or whatever it is, right? You can throw some stuff at people, even in the class, in a special exercise way that works really good. And then with clients, like the one-on-one people, it's even I shouldn't say easier, but like more common, you know, like in a class setting, if we got a 20-minute AMRAP, we're not going to do extra stuff. Like we did all the stuff we're going to do. Right. But for, you know, like I read a bunch of workouts online for people, and this one of my good guys, Dennis, you know, he, you know, the kind of dude, he's like stiff in the shoulder at the shoulder. And so he does a press and it like comes here when he finishes it before he resets. And it's like, good. Oof. And then he resets it. It's not that, you know, it's like, it's kind of weird. And you're like, dude, hold your elbows straight. And he's like, what do you mean? And they go straight. But when he does like a compound movement, they won't just stay stiff. And I see it like the dude presses with his shoulders as opposed to with his elbows, because he'll achieve lockout, but it won't hold because his elbows aren't going to work. Right. So it's like, okay, so we got to put a bunch of elbow stuff in his programming because his brain doesn't connect to his elbow properly. So you got like, I think you taught me these, Shane, the straight arm holds against the bands. You know, you just grab a pair of bands and push the son bitches down and hold them and just walk back until you're like, this is fucking brutal. Like totally. Like those, you know, those are special exercises that's in his programming. And we do forward banded stuff. So we can see his elbow lock out while it's locking out. Like we got to build that brain connection, and, you know, so things like that where it, you know, it's non-standard stuff versus just like more bodybuilding fare of like, make your elbow go straight, make your tricep huge.
Well, so if you just keep shoulder pressing, that's not going to fix the issue. You know, you look for what the breakdown, you know, where you can build that movement up, and that's what you're doing. You're diagnosing a movement pattern, like what's the weakest part of that movement, and how can I make it stronger? But I think that's and you can do that like in gymnastics, right? I think you talked about some guys in your handstand push-up people, like you keep doing full handstand push-ups, that might not just get you where you need to go. Like, let's prescribe some special exercises. I wanted to chat a little bit because this came up and I've thought about it recently, just how random it is. But I think it does have some transference with Conjugate. I think it was on our epic 6-hour trip to Bend through the winter storm for the level 2 we just did here a couple months ago. But you talked about last time you were at a conference for Willamette University, I think somewhere up in the Seattle area. And somebody was introducing the Nordic study, which was I wanted to kind of briefly talk about it. The Nordic study, I mean, everybody knows about the Nordic curl now. But, you know, Westside's obviously been doing banded inverse curls and GHRs for a lot of that same reason. So I guess quickly run us through that. And then, I guess maybe between the group of us talk about why we think, because, you know, sometimes in that hamstring curl has been criticized because it's a low velocity, high load, you know, knee flexion movement, which, you know, Greg would always talk about, you know, and I think he was criticizing the leg curl machine, not necessarily obviously these. And I think all of us have used that, know the transference of how powerful that is for the hamstring group. But to talk a little bit about that.
No, it's a pretty funny story. I mean, we, a buddy, Greg Boggs, and I back in the day with Stazinos, our Greek national champion swimmer advisor, did a study on breathe right nasal strips and time to lactate threshold in cyclists, which the irony, of course, is that Tudor wears breathe right strips and really enjoys them. And I also wear them when I sleep. And so it's like, fucking the world, just, if I do a thing, then generally down the road, I'm going to be kicked in the ass by that very thing. So I'm like, okay. So we did this, you know, we did the study, and we're there and presenting research at it was in Missoula.
Okay.
And we did this hell of a road trip to Missoula, and there's all the nerds with your little, you know, your sandwich board, and here's my study, and people come and talk to you about what you did or whatever. And the dudes literally next to us are presenting research with this funny hamstring negative move, where they took it through some school in Sweden, like a proper sporting school, you know, where they have like kids who are like 4 play soccer, and they got people all the way up to like 40 who play soccer, and the kids that are in their 20s or whatever, like they're on the national team and they're playing all over Europe, and they're really good. But it's a sporting school specifically for soccer. And they implemented the Nordic curl 3 days a week. They're just in the field. That's the thing, is there was no equipment. You just got nerds in grass, and you hold your foot down, and everybody just falls because nobody can do the up. Everybody's just doing the down. And they do 3 sets or 5 sets of 5 negatives. And they went from however many, you know, umpteen thousand hamstring pulls you're going to get in a, you know, a countrywide soccer league to 0. And they were like, I think it's effective. We didn't get any hamstring pulls. And it was like, shit, yeah, we're going to start doing those too, man. That's pretty cool. And it was like, our research was stupid. Theirs was actually pretty rad. So yeah, I mean, that was probably 2001. You know,
whoa.
And then, you know, as soon as I saw the glute ham raise and, you know, from Westside, I was like, these guys have perfected, because I mean, shit, the video on the VHS, it was like Ruggiero or somebody who's like a 350-pound guy, and they got the back of the GHD jacked up, and the dude's just doing reps, and I was like, that dude's the heaviest dude that's ever even tried that exercise, and he can just do it easy. That dude's way strong. Like, that dude's out of control strong, versus anybody else. You got 142-pound soccer player, can't do the negative. Mm-hmm. Bro, you got nothing. You've got half a hamstring. You don't even have, I don't know what the hell you have, but it's nothing, So I don't know. It's one of that's the deal there. But as far as the not training the hamstring to produce, Chris, I'm trying to paraphrase your question again. Because that's one of those things that we teach that where that's the function is incorrect to load it and then lower the velocity way down.
I think we think with the hamstring function in sport, it's high velocity, low load, which was and I think that was in one case where maybe it was used in the GHD lecture way back in the day. But I mean, anybody that's used them knows when you do the GHRs and the banded inverse curl, like, okay, wow, like that's a.
Well, here's one thing I would say though. While you're not moving fast, it's just like a powerlifter who squats 1,000 pounds. Their tissue's firing ultra fast, and if you're making it up on a Nordic curl, your hamstrings are firing with a massive amount of intensity. And you're trying to fire that tissue fast. It's violent. You got to get that acceleration, that momentum going. And so, while it's slow, there's also it's different than doing a leg curl, right? Like, people don't put that intensity and effort into acceleration velocity they do when they do leg curls. They kind of go through a motion, and they have like a cadence to it, but you don't sit there in cadence inverse, or like Nordic curls, right? Like, you lower yourself, you get in position, boom, you fire as hard as you can. You're not going to move fast because it's a heavy load, just like a max squat for somebody. But also, like, you take those explosive squatters, like a Phil Harrington or someone like that, and you give them a submaximal load, and it's still a heavy weight for their body weight, but you're seeing a velocity that's unbelievable, just like out of Chuck Vogelpohl. Like, watch Chuck Vogelpohl do Nordic curls, doesn't look ultra fast. To watch him squat,
it's lightning.
I mean, 300 pounds, nobody's putting that on a leg curl machine. And like, think about the lever distance, because you're a straight line from knee to top of your head. Like, that is an enormous long lever that you're lifting 300 something pounds off of. You're not putting that on a leg curl machine. It's a completely different. And I think holding the hip isometric, there's just something about the ability to keep your hips extended while you flex the knee.
And I think you have a great point, Chris, because it's not even just the hips too, but look at what you're doing with your midline. Like, if you're doing them correctly, your midline's locked in position, so you're transferring all this energy down. Yep. And I think that also adds a good component to it as well for athletes, because, if you're looking at hamstring curls, right, what I noticed for like NFL athletes, I feel the majority of their hamstring injuries happen because they don't have good midline. Like, their spinal erectors, obliques, abs are not strong enough to stabilize the hips. So when the hips are shifting side to side, it's pulling on the hamstring, the insertion up by the glute, right? And that's where you see real high tear rate right up by that glute. But if you think with that Nordic curl, you got to stabilize those hips to get it all on your hamstrings and to get your hamstrings the best shot of being able to complete the movement. So there might be a component to that too as well.
I tore mine real bad, and I can say for sure my glutes were my weakest spot. I had an anterior tilt. I didn't extend my hips very well. At that point, that's nobody squatted below parallel in the late 90s and early 2000s, because just not what you really did. So I was very, very quad dominant, hip flexor dominant, and not, and I ended up tearing, having high hamstring tear, which is interesting. Like, you talked about that study. Anyway, I thought it was super cool to be around. I mean, look at how popular that movement's gotten here in the last, couple of years too.
Yeah. I think there's more happening in the hamstring than, glute ham raises are rad as far as that goes. And same with the Nordic curl, all that, that's the high force and all that kind of stuff. But you got to think about it like I think from the place that line comes from is in the what is CrossFit lecture, Chris, when you're going through universal motor recruitment patterns. The trick though is when you're thinking about running, or like maybe biking, is when you're thinking about that motor pattern of like the leg is unweighted and it moves through this little range, and then that's that, and so it's very different than what the hamstring really does or whatever. But you got to think about like when you're squatting, you take that athlete to the bottom of the squat, and then they come up to where the sticking point happens, right? And remember, like you remember like Lombard's paradox you showed Chris a long time ago, where you got all these biarticular muscles and some of these monoarticular muscles in your legs, and they're all firing all at the same time. And how the fuck does that make your legs straighten out? If you have flexors and extensors firing at the same time,
Exactly.
you should be stuck.
Yeah.
This does not make any sense. And I totally dig it, and I agree with it. And what happens is at the back of the knee, there needs to be a massive isometric control of that joint to allow the hip to function in the squatting motion. And if your hamstring can't hold the knee shut while your quads and hip and glutes do the job, you will be stuck in your squat in the middle and you can't stand up because your body will just tip you over, or you'll just get stuck.
Yeah.
And this may be something the coach didn't even know. I don't know. I mean, I suppose the guy knows everything, but I think it may be just an easy example to use in what is CrossFit to talk about that as the silliness of a seated hamstring curl. But at the same point in time, in that specific motion, I think it even occurs in deadlifting, of course, but in that isometric moment in the squat at the sticking point, it is 100% about your ability to keep the knee shut, which is a massive, massive isometric force at the knee. So it might not look whatever, but there's something there that's special, and that inverse curl is going to train the piss out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the results speak for themselves. That's for sure. It's one of those things. You've seen it, and obviously Ben Patrick's shown a ton of great athletes. Tyreek Hill's one of them, and he's shown all sorts of what Rod Brindamore, a famous NHL hockey player, would do him religiously. Dude awesome. Played till he was like 45 or something. Well, cool, super random, but thought it was a pretty cool little note that I thought about after we talked yesterday.
Well, it's those things that you bring up that's like conversation that gets people to the next level, right? We talk about the stuff that everybody talks about all the time. It's little details like that change a game for somebody, so someone out there might be listening and realize they've had some certain issues in squatting or different injuries in sport. A soccer player doesn't want to tear their hamstrings anymore. It's kind of amazing how that works. I had a guy who he was a 14-year-old who had the fastest quarter miles time in the state for his age, played football, detached both his hamstrings, did it so bad it broke his tailbone when it happened. So I started working with him afterwards. He's like, back then he's like, oh, the football coaches won't let me deadlift. I'm like, well, we're deadlifting. Well, they won't let me deadlift. Well, you're not playing football right now, so don't worry about it. So we started working on, deadlifts, box squats, glute ham raises, and then Nordic curls. It took a while to get into those. But it's like I remember, once his deadlift was over double when he came in, he's repping what he, double the weight that he could do for a single. No problem with his hamstrings, no pain, has a lot better mobility, running faster times than he ever has before, and doesn't have to worry about injuries, And it's interesting to see how that stuff goes. If people still, for whatever reason, are reluctant to it. I think it's what coaches do, they do what they know, and they're not searching to evolve that knowledge to include what they know now is more. And it's like, they think they're going to get the same result. And it's like, they might've had some luck in the past. Maybe they had just a magical group of people, the right atmosphere at the right time, or the other coaches didn't know anything either. And then it gets to the point where some other coach evolves. Next thing you know, they're wondering why this program's not successful anymore and they're getting beat, but so I'm glad you brought it up, man. It's actually something great to talk about. So this little nuance, but that little nuance shows up in so many sports and so many different things,
Or they go rely on recruiting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Hey, recruit the best athletes in the world. I can get the second best, and if I can make them better, it doesn't matter.
That's right. That's right.
So whatever. Like I always say, we always talk about Lou. It's like, one of the greatest strength coaches of all time magically bought a house in the world's strongest neighborhood, took 6 people who never lifted before and made them world record holders. Yeah, that's how it works. It's like, and then it's like I went and learned from Lou, and I come to Cincinnati and I take a bunch of local people from Cincinnati and we break 127 world records, in powerlifting. It's like, oh, because, I magically moved to the next best place to build powerlifters, They were waiting right down the road in Cincinnati,
That's right.
Got lucky and got the building in the right spot,
Must be Ohio.
Yeah, right. Well, there's something to that when you have nothing else to do. You get
Ohio
good
and
at
Iceland.
Yeah, right. No joke.
Cool, boys.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys.
That was awesome, Jesse. Thank you.
We'll wrap it up there. Cheers, obviously, to the big man for coming and hanging out with us. If you want to catch up with him, you can find him best probably in person at Locals Gym. And then you can check the website out. They're doing blog posts. You can find their content at localsgym.com. What's the other gym?
It's Turn It Loose CrossFit. It's in Edmonds.
Sweet. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair and upfront, that Big Jesse was the first programmer that I used who wasn't myself. And I worked with, I think we worked together for a couple of years where you were doing all my programming. American Death March.
That's the big one.
Yeah. I mean, any time spent with them is super high value and fantastic. If you are in that area, it is for sure worth trying to book some time and learn any of the knowledge that he's attained over more than 20 years. Other than that, you can find all of us at our own Instagram handles that we've mentioned a million times, on the YouTubes. If you want to see our faces whilst you listen, at Conjugate Nation podcast. And that is all. If you've listened and made it this far, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Don't be afraid to like. It literally costs you nothing. Thank you for the time. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Cheers.
Conjugate Nation podcast.